delightful and very architecturally inspiring Geelong Library, part of the Geelong Regional Library Group. And sitting opposite us is Vanessa Schernickau. I knew I was going to bugger that up, but anyway, thank you, Vanessa. And we've been really looking forward to this. We caught up with Vanessa a few weeks ago, and Vanessa's got a fascinating story. So, Bill, lead us away.
Thank you, Mark. And Vanessa, it's great to be here with you today in this great boardroom that you've got here in the library, which I also understand is for hire if people want to use it.
It's part of our suite of meeting rooms.
Yeah, and it's got all the technology you could need. So that's good. All right, so the Vanessa story.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
I guess that's what. But libraries probably misunderstood by a number of people, I would suggest.
Sure.
And I know that as the CEO, you've got 19 regional libraries under your belt, and you've got 3 mobile libraries.
Yes, that's right.
Now that's a huge resource when you think about it.
Yeah.
And so our aim was to come and find out a bit more about it, let our listeners know a bit more about it, and I'm looking for how libraries can actually connect with business in the future and small business owners.
Sure.
And and we'll explore that with you as at a later date.
Yep.
But all right from the start, tell us about your life story.
My
journey.
life story, right. Well, how far back do you want to go?
Well, where did you go to primary school?
So my first primary school was in Australia. I went to Mooralbark Primary School, which is out below the Dandenong Ranges, Lilydale Way. And I went there until grade 5. My parents were migrants. My dad was from Germany. My mum was from England. And when I was in year 5, we actually moved over to Ireland. And so, first of all, my very first visit to the public library, I remember very well going to Croydon Library. And it was a weekly event. When we went into Croydon to go shopping, we always went to the library. And I can remember waiting until I was old enough to get my first books, which is something that libraries in the good old days, it was very much about rules and regulations. I remember my first 2 library books. It was Jane's first day at school. I finished it by the time I got home and had to wait until next week. Anyway, when I was in grade 5, we moved to Ireland, and I went to some schools in the UK and finished up living in Liverpool and going to high school in Liverpool in England. And public libraries continued to play a really important role in my life. Living with a single mum, they were where I spent a lot of time, obviously taking books out. I remember waiting until I had to be 13 to be able to access the adult library collection at Crosby Library in Liverpool. And so these sort of were milestones, actually. And then when I was in year 12, being allowed to go into Liverpool during school time to go to the Liverpool Library, which would be the equivalent of the State Library in Melbourne, and, pretending to study there and feeling, very grown up, being allowed to be out. But what libraries actually are about and were about for me was access to knowledge and information, and a safe place that I could go. I could go there after school, and having a single parent on a low income, it was access to information for me. And, obviously we weren't a family that could buy books. And I knew that the only way for me to get on in life was through my education. So I was very fortunate that I then went to London to study. And public libraries had a big role in my life. So how fortunate am I now to
Vanessa,
work in them?
I know I spent a lot of time when I went to RMIT back many years ago, nicking across the road and hiding away in that beautiful library in Melbourne. It's a really great set. So how did you get to Australia? What was that stepping point?
So when I was about, I think, 22, 23, always said I would come back here, and I had an Australian passport. And so I didn't have a British one, actually, because in those days you had to make a choice. Yep. I decided I was going to have an Australian passport because when I went to get a British one, I was told, well, no, it goes on your father. And my father was German. So that's that. Even though I was a resident, I thought, well, I'll be Australian, thanks. I'm very proud of that. And so I came back, backpacked, as you do, in my 20s, and arrived back here into a shared house in Melbourne. And here I am.
Fantastic. And so your first job when you got back?
Oh, my goodness. I worked for a courier company called TNT Skypack.
Yes.
International Couriers, if you remember that.
Yep.
And I was customer service. So, front-facing, dealing with clients, wanting to send their package overseas to whichever country it might be.
Cool. And so where did you go from there? Where did your career sort of start?
Yes. Well, it was interesting because my 20s, I really did travel a lot. I would save money to travel. And so, as people often do, sort of fell into management and leadership through hospitality. And when I was 30, I ended up managing a hotel, and from there got into training and development. I ended up at the ANZ in leadership, developing leadership programs, and from there got into government, local government, through organisational development and HR, and it just sort of built from there, really. So not a well-planned career.
But as far as libraries go, though,
yes.
You've done a 360 degree, haven't you?
I have.
Because I note here that you were actually employed at the library in Geelong in 2012.
I was.
And then you went off and were in various government roles and all sorts of other places. And here you are in 2023 back as the CEO of the Geelong Library Corporation.
Yes, I pinch myself. I can't believe that. I just love my job. I feel very fortunate. And I think that everything that I did to this point, for example, I was working for Library Corporation when the three of us were on the AICD committee.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yep. And then from here I went to Darwin with the Department of Education. That was Aboriginal workforce development, supporting teachers, and also introducing the performance development framework, National Performance Development Framework for teachers, but all leading towards actually transformational change, cultural change, and leading organisations which ultimately are about people.
Which is where I think you and I caught up initially, which you were the CEO at Great Ocean Road
Coast Committee. That's right. I know.
And that was all about transformational change in a big way.
Absolutely. It was about the organisation preparing for the Great Ocean Road Authority, Parks and Coast Authority, which is, gone from strength to strength. So, yes, same thing, the transformation piece.
Yep. And then Vic Roads, same sort of thing?
Department of Transport, yes, where, of course, we crossed paths again. Attending the Geelong Authority meetings, and obviously the G21 transport strategy as well. Yeah.
So it's good. So it's interesting because we love people's journeys.
Yes.
Where they start off is not where they think they'll end up. And you've ended back where you want to be, that passion, but it's that transformational change that's driven.
Yes,
driven
definitely,
your destiny,
definitely. And I think from a leadership perspective, it's every organisation I've been in. Often it's that piece around being a technical specialist, which are absolutely essential in organisations and need to be valued in organisations. But equally, I believe that there is a professional practice around leading organisations and supporting the technical specialists so that they can do the best job that they can possibly do.
All right, on that theme, leadership.
Yes.
What's your leadership style? And the second part of that question is, if we asked your employees to tell us about your leadership style.
I'm in an interview now.
Yeah. But what do you see your key leadership style to be successful in this role?
Yeah. So for me, I think it's getting out of the way and creating a culture where people feel safe and are encouraged to be innovative and try different things. With COVID, I do think that COVID affected everyone. didn't matter where you were in the organisation, your role, what you do, it impacted everyone. And no one was protected from it, really. So I do think that leadership, and in terms of my leadership style, a lot of that over the last couple of years has had to sort of reflect that. So if you're talking about an organisational change or transformation, you can only do that in a time of a pandemic where you're also showing care and trying to understand where individuals are, and the tension between wanting to do something quickly and actually understanding where people are and what they are able to do. So I think that my leadership style is around allowing people to feel safe to try new things, because we have to in this world where our customers' behaviours have changed, their expectations have changed over the last couple of years. Our staff expectations have changed as well around how they want to live their lives. So being very adaptable and flexible. But also, if you are going to allow people to do that, they also want to know what is the vision and the direction. So
that's the comms side of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
really.
That's right.
That's right. So how many staff do you have in the corporation?
I think just over 200.
Yeah, well, that's sizable.
Yeah. And with Drysdale new library opening next month, there'll be a couple of more staff coming on board, and then Armstrong Creek Library opening next year.
And second part of this, how are libraries funded?
So we are funded primarily through government, between our member councils and state government.
And have you ever got enough money?
So every year, the state government contribution, regardless of which government of the day, whatever the government of the day is, proportionally is going down. So there's pressure on our member councils to find that additional funding. And that, of course, that's not just us, that's recreational facilities, that's a challenge. And the way we are funded is that when a new library is built, for example, there'll be co-contribution between state and local government, but then the day-to-day operational funding is primarily being borne more and more by council. That percentage that councils need to give is increasing each year.
How many councils?
5. So we're G21.
G21.
Yeah.
So you look after Colac Library?
We do. Colac and Apollo Bay joined us a couple of years ago.
That's a big area to cover then.
Yeah, it's great. But, there are some things that come with that around efficiencies. So we have one collection. So we have, over 400,000 collection items. But you can go to Colac or Bannockburn Library and order that item and it'll come to you. So there are some efficiencies there, also around programming, service delivery, how we do that.
The other thing, Mark, we can't go past without talking about this building.
Yes.
Your award-winning design.
Absolutely, City of Design.
And as I look out the window across the road at the Geelong Arts Centre, boys, this whole precinct is having a rebirth, hasn't it?
It is.
So tell us a bit about the joys of this building.
So the Geelong Library and Heritage Centre, it's 7 years old now, and really it's part of the cultural precinct that is Little Mallop Street. And when I was around 10 years ago, I was actually around when this library was announced, the funding for it, and the first concept designs were done. So ARM were the architects, and the same architects that are building the Arts Centre across the road. And there was always a strategy from those days around this being the cultural precinct, including the Geelong Art Gallery, and obviously the funding for the redevelopment of the Art Gallery will finish that vision off. So, and then we have Platform Arts on the corner, back-to-back theatre, so it's really a pretty exciting place to be.
So within the library, I mean, libraries are more than just books.
Yes.
So what other services have you got?
So within this library and some of our other libraries, obviously we have meeting rooms. There's a whole piece around libraries being a third place. So and actually this is even more important now post-pandemic, as people have with the hybrid models of working. And Bill, you came to our Talk It Up forum about, has working from home peaked? We have a lot of people now coming into our libraries because they are working from home. Maybe it's noisy at home, or they can't access broadband or whatever it might be. So people will come to our libraries to hold meetings. We're community spaces, so anyone can sit here. You don't have to be a member. You can bring in your coffee, you can bring in your lunch, you can sit here, do your work. Obviously, we have a lot of students come here too. We're finding more and more our libraries are becoming collaborative spaces, and we are moving towards the sort of digital equipment that people want to experiment with and try out. So, for example, you've brought in your equipment for the podcast today. We're just in the process of setting up a podcast space in the Geelong Library, which community will be able to come and use. Not everyone, for example, knows how to use this equipment, but might be interested in doing this, so they can come here and play. And you can come here and use this equipment without necessarily studying but you've got a great idea and you just want to experiment. So libraries are very much about experimenting.
It's interesting about being a space to come because we did have what we call a business hub with the National Bank around the corner, and of course that's closed. And then other than North Geelong facility, we don't have...
Runway HQ.
Yeah, Runway. Yep. We don't have in this region dedicated business hubs where people can just go in and get a room for a day or hot desk or whatever it is, or take a permanent desk. Yeah. And it occurs to me that that's part of what you're telling me can happen here.
Yeah. So we have meeting rooms. I think we've got 5 meeting rooms here, and they have a community rate or a business rate. We have meeting rooms at Wamponds Library, for example, Leopold, Bannockburn, Colac. So they're all available for community. And part of our role is about, obviously about literacy development for adults as well as young people, but it's also about closing the digital gap and how we do that. And so, everyone talks about I want to have a side hustle or whatever it might be, and there's young people who are very isolated, who've really been impacted by COVID, they're sitting at home. They can come here and start experimenting with some of those ideas. Corio Library, we have sewing machines and an overlocker. Oh, wow. So, people can go and try and experiment with those and say, well, maybe I'd like to set up a little business making stuff, or maybe I'm just lonely and I just want to come and join a book club in the library or a knitting club or play chess with someone or whatever it might be. So we have a large health and wellbeing focus. During COVID, public libraries were deemed by the government an essential service because people could come into the library and learn how to access MyGov. That's a pretty tricky thing frustrating for me, just in terms of trying to put in the right password. Yep. But for many people, actually, that stuff is scary, and people might not even have a smartphone. So we could help them print out their certificates, their VAC certificate, but also make sure they're on MyGov and needed to be doing what they're doing. So we could be helping people, job seekers, So we have government services, for example, who will tell someone to come into their local library to do their job applications or do whatever else they need to do. So,
well, the way the banks are closing branches, you might end up being a bank branch soon.
Well, funding is an interesting challenge for us, and one of the things that we do need to think about, and it is a new area, is we need to look for different sources of revenue. And that's certainly something now that I've been here a year and a half, I'm really turning my attention to. And we can't be embarrassed or ashamed about that. We don't have public libraries in America, for example, they're philanthropically funded, really. In the UK, many public libraries were closed, run by volunteers. We don't want that either. So we're very, very fortunate in Australia that our public libraries are supported by government, and government understand the importance of them. However, we do need to start thinking about sponsorship and partnership opportunities. NBN sponsored our Talk It Up forum. What does that look like for us moving forward?
It's interesting. Mark and I have done a little bit of work on for all those sort of 50 plus. Mm-hmm. In fact, we've got a Facebook site called 50 Pluspreneurs.
Yeah. And
we ran a workshop here in Geelong during Small Business Month. Mm-hmm. And it was it's people who are sort of, we'll cut the age off at 50 just for the one of the conversation.
Yeah.
But if you're working in an organisation, you're 50 plus or you're doing whatever you're doing, and you're looking, you know that you're not going to get looked at for advancement. You're not in line for professional development. And if you want to go somewhere else, the rejection rate for over 50s for jobs is huge. And the fastest growing segment of new startups in the US and Canada are those in the 50 plus.
Right.
So we're a bit passionate about you mentioned side hustles before, but how can we sort of work that up, that whole program, which is one of the things we're doing. But it occurs to me, Mark, the library might be somewhere that we could
definitely
have a future discussion about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because we do a lot of programs, senior focused programs, and I think that, again, keeping up with the changes in technology, but also not underestimating older people too, because a lot of our programs, and they've been sponsored programs, so we work closely with UA3, for example, U3A, sorry, got it the wrong way around. That must be my over 50s brain. But a lot of it is showing older people how to use iPads, for example.
Mature persons.
Mature people.
That's my expression.
Thank you. Well, most people know how to do that. And now we're post-COVID. If they didn't know how to do it, they learnt during COVID. So I think you're right. We need to be thinking about what does that actually look like in a much more creative and innovative way than just saying, do you know how to use Facebook? So you can chat to your grandkids.
Unknown possibilities,
yes.
Mark and Vanessa. I just don't, unfortunately, you need to sit down and work through some of these issues.
Well, the other piece is, of course, there are a lot of mature people who, during COVID, decided that they were going to finish up their formal career probably a bit earlier than they planned. Yeah. And they're quite happy with that decision, but now they're ready for something different. Yep. So they've made some choices and now they're thinking, well, okay, what can I do? So that's an untapped market, I think, an audience for libraries as well. And
we started with libraries are about books, but what's the online component? Can you download a book?
Yes.
So you don't have to come in and get the book?
No.
Okay.
So I think about 25% of our collection, our usage is our ebooks, audiobooks, and obviously online magazines and newspapers as well can all be accessed. So you can read the Addy or the Age online through your library membership for free.
That's
probably a secret, that one, a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I certainly didn't know that. What have I been paying my subs to the Addy for? I think I might have to change now.
That's through Newsbank, which is one of the that normally would be a subscription that you would pay for.
And what's a library membership cost?
Nothing.
That's exactly right. So it's interesting, isn't it? There's this resource sitting here that we probably need to push a bit harder.
Well, libraries are about access to information.
Yes.
So traditionally people have thought, oh, well, that information is in a book. But actually we receive information through all kinds of avenues. And one of the roles that we play here also that's very important is about showing people how to find information online. It's not just Google. Yep. How else do you find it? And now when we talk about, fake news, it's even more important that people know how to access that information.
Well, we had a crack at
ChatGPT
the other day, which was an interesting exercise. But so as the CEO of a 200-person corporation,
yes,
what do you think your biggest challenges are?
Definitely long-term sustainability in terms of revenue. I think also having a really healthy workplace culture, which is challenged with our new world and what that looks like, and hybrid ways of working. And, we have people who during COVID continued to work. We kept all our staff employed during the pandemic, but equally they were helping people who were going through tough times. Yep. And so building our culture and a resilient culture where it's fun to come to work and people are so passionate about our customers and wanting to make a difference that they, for a couple of years, really put the customers in front of their own health and well-being. So really looking after our staff so we've got a resilient long-term place where people want to work as well.
And the opportunities ahead?
Opportunities ahead, definitely. Really exciting stuff around the digital world and what that looks like. Opportunities more around maker spaces, creative spaces, people working in our libraries and what that looks like. There is no doubt that we have a crucial role around literacy development. So I know it's not so much focused on small business, but actually it's the future workforce.
There's a lot of people working small business that can't read and write properly.
Yeah.
It's really about fundamentals.
Yeah.
You've got employees, you want to look after them. What can you offer them?
Yeah. So, and that plays out in unexpected ways. So last year we started a program. We just started it in this library, but it's now being rolled out across most of our libraries for students who are studying at home. So there's a huge cohort of children and young people who were, as a result of COVID, really finding it very difficult to return to formal education and returning to school. We had kids sitting outside the libraries who were so anxious they couldn't get out of the car to come into the library. And now they're coming in and meeting other kids who are homeschooled, and the parents are connecting with each other face to face and building those connections. So that's just one example that where we play a huge role. And obviously around literacy and digital development as well.
Fantastic. So on a practical nature,
yes.
if someone wants to book a room,
yes,
what's the best way to do that?
You can go online and do that.
Do all that.
Very easy to do. Yep.
And the podcast studio will be through there as well, perhaps?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
When
so
it's up?
That'll be this year. Not quite sure when. That'll be here. But equally, you've brought in your equipment, and if anyone wants to bring in their equipment. We have one person who brings their own monitor in when they come and work here because it's set the way they want it, so it's fine.
You're quite happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's why we've got the equipment we've got, is because it's it's portable. Just
Yeah.
one last question for
Yes.
me. How big's your database? Because you must touch a lot of people.
Do you mean our membership?
Yeah.
So our membership, formal membership, is about 125,000. But we also think about visitation. So we think about everyone who comes into our libraries who aren't formal members because they don't actually want to access our collection. They just want to use our spaces. So yeah, we're here across the region.
It's a fantastic story, isn't it, Bill? And
Thank you.
And again, it's one of those many things that sits here in the middle of Geelong. Everybody knows, but the services that are there, not everybody utilises or gets involved with.
That's right.
I would really encourage people listening to this to, if you haven't, wander into the library. There is a little cafe next door as part of the library. So, and they do make good coffee.
They do.
And have a wander around. And if the top floor is open and there's not a function on, go and have a look across Geelong, and it's the best view of Geelong.
Absolutely. And we do tours of the library if people are interested.
Fantastic.
But we can just do those informally as well. If the staff are free, they'll take you up and show you. Yeah.
So Vanessa, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vanessa, I agree. It's another education for us today, Mark. And Vanessa, we always claim we're into continuous learning.
Yes.
And this is just another episode of our continuous learning.
Thank you.
So
Me too.
thank you for being with us today. I think
it's been a pleasure.
Very interesting story.
Thank you.
Thank you.